joined here today by Charlie Wein, who is the Director of Marketing and Communications for the Andersonville Chamber of Commerce. I believe I got that right, Charlie?
Yes, indeed.
All right, awesome. So far, so good on this interview. Yeah,
We're starting
he,
strong.
yeah. So, Charlie, if you just want to, in case anybody who's listening is unfamiliar with either Andersonville or what a Chamber of Commerce even does and the role they play within the community that they serve and what your role is within that organization and just anything like that. Just kind of, some brief intro points before we get into it. Anything you'd want to say to that?
Yeah, sure. So Andersonville is the shop local capital of Chicago. It is about 5 or so miles north of downtown, or 6 or so miles. We are a traditionally Swedish neighborhood. So the neighborhood has a lot of Swedish culture. We're pretty known for our our logo being the water tower. We have a Swedish water tower in the neighborhood. So it's a big water tower with the blue and yellow stripes, the Swedish flag. We're the home of the Chicago Swedish American Museum. We're the home of the annual Midsommarfest celebration, which is our 3-day music and street festival that celebrates midsummer, which is the Swedish celebration of summer. So we are the shop local capital of Chicago. So we are able to boast, a very large percentage of local and small businesses, sole proprietorship owned businesses, or even just local chains in the neighborhood than anywhere else in the city. And we're very proud of that. We're sort of a very community oriented neighborhood. So as a chamber of commerce, we are a nonprofit. We're a 501c6. I think sometimes there's some confusion thinking we work for the city. We do not. We are a
Hmm.
nonprofit run by 4 people. Our job is basically to support the neighborhood and support the businesses. So we kind of say, we have a page that says what the chamber does, what the chamber doesn't do. And for what the chamber does, we could essentially put, just call us. We do a little bit of everything. Or if we can't help with a certain issue, we know that you too. So a big part of what we do is we do a lot of events in the neighborhood. We probably do 3 or so events a month, trying to get people to come into the neighborhood, to find the small businesses, to shop, just to see, everything we have in terms of dining and retail and services. We do things like wine walks and cocoa crawls and puzzle exchanges. We have a whole host of holiday events every year. So our job is to support the neighborhood, to support the businesses, to be a resource for them, to help them stay in business and to thrive. So I mean, I just like to say we're
Yeah.
here to keep our small neighborhood small.
Well, it seems like whatever you're doing and, whatever other entities you might be partnering with to do it seems to be working because it seems like I can't go, more than a couple months without seeing some headline of some like magazine or something like that. It's like Andersonville voted, number one coolest
Yeah,
neighborhood in the world or like something crazy like that. Like
yeah.
literally stuff like that, I see out there and it's like,
Well,
yeah,
2 year,
and Andersonville is a cool area. I can see it.
yeah, 2 years ago, Time Out magazine, International Time Out, voted Andersonville the second coolest neighborhood in the world
Mhm.
and number one in the U.S. Of course. Then, so that was a really interesting time. That was great. It was really
Yeah.
good to see that. And yeah, we do get a lot of people that come in. We get a lot of publications that come in from like Canada and Europe, various places in Europe, especially the UK, that know of us and want to talk to us, figure out what makes us tick and what makes the neighborhood who it is.
Mhm.
So yeah, so a big part of my job, besides running social media, doing our newsletter, and communicating with our residents and our businesses, is representing the neighborhood. So I was on ABC the other day to talk about Midsommarfest, and WGN generally likes to come in and do features on any events that we're doing. So I, but the other, as a part of that's the marketing, a part of the communications too, but is really building relationships with our businesses. We try and stay very keyed in with what's going on with them. We talk to them constantly, like every day we're connecting with our business owners and figuring out what we can do next to support them.
Mhm. And so how have you guys, or again, whether it's you or it's kind of more, government level entities or whatever it is, but how have you kind of maintained that shop local, emphasis on local businesses and things like that? I mean, there has to be some kind of tension, I would imagine, when a neighborhood like this is clearly on a, steep upward trajectory and you probably are getting attention from all kinds of, like corporate retailers and restaurants and fast foods and all that kind of stuff who are like, yeah, we want a piece of that. So like, what comes next with that when you're kind of trying to maintain this vibe?
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. It's something we deal with every day and day in, day out. Exactly that. Since Andersonville started getting more attention, there have been more big box businesses coming in looking to insert themselves in the neighborhood. Uh, one thing I'll put out there from the start is the chamber. We have no say when it comes to what businesses come in. We have no say in terms of property rentals and sales. We have no say in terms of permitting, who gets permits for
Hmm.
one thing or another. We
Yeah.
can provide insight and we can provide direction and advice and let people know where we think what we think is best. But we unfortunately can't control if Taco Bell wants to come in. But the first thing, of course, is getting people into the neighborhood and introducing them to our business owners. So the events we do bring people in. We do, for instance, we do an arts weekend every weekend. We do an arts weekend every year, end of September, beginning of October, where we host maybe over 60 or so local artists in various businesses in the neighborhood. And it's sort of a self-guided tour from the top of Andersonville to the bottom, where residents and just attendees can go into the businesses, meet these local artists, and meet the business owners and have good personable conversations with them. I think in terms of the logistics of dealing with some of these big box chains wanting to come in and how that's handled, I think a great example of that happened recently. Just I think that's something that our community takes very seriously and our business owners take very seriously. And as a chamber, we're very limited in what we're able to do, but our business owners and our residents are not shy about making their opinions known and doing what they can to help. So there was a
Hmm.
big chain business that was looking to come in and buy a building that just became available in Andersonville. And, unfortunately, it was a situation where the business that wanted to come in would have been a direct competitor with a couple of our small local businesses, to the point where there sort of was some disconcerting tactics taking place in terms of where they were setting up and what they might be carrying. And our business owners got together and created a petition, signed a petition, and they advocated for themselves. And based on the work that they did and the feedback that came from the neighborhood, that business did not end up coming in. And, we can't say, of course, one way or another what might have happened from the business, from their financial side or whatever or whatnot, or the property manager. But it was a pretty significant, we consider it a pretty significant victory in the neighborhood that the residents and the owners were able to come together and keep a big business from coming in and putting anyone out of business. So, a lot of it relies on the neighborhood and on our community, and they are a very close knit community.
Yeah. Yeah. No, they definitely are. I mean, I can even see that. So when I'm not doing the podcast, I'm a full-time real estate agent, and I definitely get people that want to live in Andersonville for all the obvious reasons. And it's just like,
Mhm.
man, get on the wait list because places in Andersonville do not. They're, I mean, no place is coming online. Like the supply in the market right now is low everywhere, but especially Andersonville. I mean, you see like a couple places a month, if that, go up for sale. It's just like very, very hard neighborhood to get into.
Yeah, people don't move. People move here. They come to love it, or if they didn't know it already, and they don't want to move. I have a friend who's trying to move here right now, and he really wants to move to Andersonville, and he's bugging me every day, being like, "Is anything open? Is anything open?" And he just, he can't
Yeah,
get in. He can't get in. But people like
yeah,
to be here. They like to stay here. I think a lot of our residents that I know have been here for a couple decades. They say they don't want to live
yeah.
anywhere else in Chicago.
Time now for the Real Estate Stats Corner presented by me, Jake Lyons, real estate advisor here in the Chicagoland area with At Properties and Christie's International and my website, thechicagohomesource.com. In this episode, I will, of course, be going over the Andersonville neighborhood since that's the neighborhood that we're focusing on in this episode. And I am going to be giving you three statistics that I believe paint at least a pretty broad overview picture of what people are willing to pay to live in the Andersonville area. Because after all, what is a neighborhood without real estate? So that's why, biased as I might be, we like to talk about real estate prices with these episodes. So the three stats that I'm going to be sharing are the median sales price as of May of 2024, the most recent stats that I have access to. The median sales price of two-bed condos, the median sales price of single-family houses, and the median rent price of two-bed apartment in the Andersonville neighborhood of Chicago. So for the two-bed condos, the median sales price is at $357,500. For single family houses, the median sales price is at $1.16 million, $1,160,000. And of course, this means, this is the median price. So half sold for more, half sold for less. That is the number right in the middle of all the places that sold. and a 2-bed apartment in the Andersonville neighborhood, as of most recently, would be going for a median of $2,350 per month, $2,350. So there you have it. That is the neighborhood real estate stats corner presented by Jake Lyons and thechicagohomesource.com. You can find that link in the show notes if you want to explore what's available in the Andersonville area right now or anywhere in the Chicagoland area. How have you seen either? How long have you been in the role or in the area?
I've been the director of marketing for about a year and a half now. I have, but I actually have been a part of Andersonville for about a decade. Andersonville was the first neighborhood I lived in when I moved here in 2012. And in that time, even though I've, had other jobs in other neighborhoods, I have managed to maintain a part of Andersonville in one way or another. I worked at a number of small businesses in the neighborhood. Visionary Eye Care was my first optical job. I worked very closely with Rattleback Records for 5 years. It's one of their very important place to me, doing their marketing and their events and everything. So, and actually everyone at the chamber has worked in small business in Andersonville before. So, I've been very ingrained in the neighborhood for a long time, and I just keep coming back here. When I first moved here, I think Midsommarfest happened right when I moved here, and it was kind of my introduction to Andersonville. And my first thought was just, wow, what a wonderful place to just be whomever you are. It was a great time. I fell in love with the neighborhood immediately. I think what I love about it is that, I come from a suburb in Pittsburgh, and I liked growing up in the suburbs, but I definitely became more of a city person. But Andersonville was this great, almost little small town, out of decades old, but when you're walking around at night, you get all the shops, and you get all the events and all the entertainment during the day and the evenings. But when you're walking around at night on the side street, these beautiful houses, and then it's just quiet. You don't have city noise. It's like it's its own little small town.
No, it really is. Yeah. Cool. So yeah, I guess this in both, in your own personal experience going back a decade, and then just stories you've heard from people who have been there even longer. And, I'm sure all kinds of different people who have been there for a very, very long time. What have you seen or know to have just changed in the neighborhood throughout the years, for better, better and or worse?
Yeah, I mean, obviously businesses change. That's the main thing, is businesses have come in and out. I think with COVID, it's obviously an unavoidable subject when it comes to this sort of thing, but we've seen property and real estate prices all over the place. The cost of opening a business are exponential already. We're exponential already. And then with real estate, things become even more difficult. So it's been interesting to see Andersonville still manage in the time since COVID to to have even more small businesses pop up. And just the past couple of years, we've had places like Paper and Pencil stationery store pop up. We had Rare Form, an Art Deco sort of home goods store open. I mean, it's been nice to still see those small businesses open, even if we do have some other chains that may be coming in. It isn't stopping the community from shopping small, which is nice. I think there's certainly, from even just a transportation standpoint, things change by, in terms of getting bike lanes and getting parking. But a statistic I was really proud of is that, and I can't name the exact statistic, actually. It's been a while since I've thought of this, but you look at other neighborhoods in Chicago after lockdown, and a lot of places, small businesses closed in other neighborhoods, and Andersonville was one of the neighborhoods that had the smallest percentage of closure of small business in the entire city of Chicago. I saw, every business found a way to transfer online if they didn't have any sort of online process at all. Obviously, they were curbside pickups, and people came out and shopped and supported them. So, and the Rattleback Record expanded into another storefront during the pandemic. So I think that's the most interesting thing I've seen change, is seeing the rest of the world and a lot of other places in Chicago sort of really suffer and be working very, very hard to get back to a place that they were before. Andersonville, of course, suffered in its way as well, but never lost its determination and its ambition to remain the neighborhood that it is.
Yeah. That's a great story. And I guess this goes to show the power of sort of planting those seeds locally and, having that base of, it's like that tight-knit community and all that we've been talking about,
Yeah.
you
I
know.
mean, it's all just about being involved. I think especially these days, people kind of have gotten a little skeptical about what they can actually change and what they can affect. And I think Andersonville is a testament to when you get a community involved, what they really can do, what they really can accomplish.
Yeah. What would you say what would you say is sort of like the ideal like what who is Andersonville ideal for?
Well, that's the thing is that I think one of the reasons people ask me, why do you think you got voted the second coolest neighborhood in the world is
Uh-huh.
partly because Andersonville is one of the neighborhoods I think really is kind of for everyone. It's interesting in that, we're known for being a very LGBTQIA plus and BIPOC inclusive neighborhood. And I think you can see that, just on a regular Saturday when people are going out on a nice day and shopping. It's not just, we're not a neighborhood that's sort of ended up catering specifically to one demographic or another.
Uh-huh.
We are a very, very LGBTQIA representative neighborhood, but we also have plenty of, young families that come in. We have older residents that have been here for generations. It's a neighborhood that I still see different people every day. I walk around this neighborhood. I walk the strip in Andersonville on Clark, and maybe 100 times a week, and I still, of course, I see a lot of people that I've met and I know, but I still see people I've never seen before every single day. So it's one of those neighborhoods where I think we try and make it welcoming and inviting to anyone who wants to come visit. There is something for everyone in Andersonville. There is something
Hmm.
for everyone.
Yeah. Do you think has it to what extent would you say that that it's maintained like the old Swedish roots, like besides, like the tower and like some of the signage and stuff like that? Do you think is it more a tradition at this point, or is there still sort of like a good because like Lincoln Square, for example, was like thought of as this old like German area, but then when you go there, it's just kind of like not really, maybe it was in the past, not really anymore.
No, Andersonville definitely has Swedish culture, represented throughout. The architecture is a big one. A big one. If you look
Yeah.
around and if you walk around Andersonville, you can see Swedish inspired architecture and just designs across the buildings. Some of our business owners have like Simon's Tavern, Scott, who owns Simon's Tavern and Svea, and Scott actually just celebrated 90 years 90 years of Simon's Tavern being open yesterday. But there's, the entire bar is, designed in Swedish for representation. The flags. He serves glögg. Glögg is one of his most popular things that he does every year. So besides, and then as the chamber, we try to incorporate as much Swedish history and tradition into what we do. So a lot of the time when we're coming up with new events, we're doing things that relate to Swedish history or Swedish tradition. So every year we have a weekend that's called Fika Fest, and Fika is a Swedish word that sort of translates to coffee and cake break. This is something that's very common in a regular daily activity in Sweden where people take a fika, where they take a break from work, they step away from their computer, they sit down with a coworker or a friend, they have a cup of coffee, they have a little cake, and they talk and they just communicate. So it's about taking a break for yourself. So that's a big one we do every week, every year. We just had a brand new event a few weeks ago called Valborg. Valborg is the celebration in Sweden of winter turning into spring. So it's celebrated at the end of April. And they'll have different cities in Sweden will have giant bonfires, and you are encouraged to throw your concerns, your worries, anything that you want to leave behind from the winter into the fire. So we took over the Chicago Waldorf School's parking lot, or excuse me, their Norris Sun and Moon Park, and had a fire going and had pieces of paper for people to write things down that they wanted to throw in. We had musical performers. We had a chef, Jacqueline Lord from the Dinner Bell, serving traditional Swedish nettle soup, which I was skeptical at first because I hate the word nettle and they make me think of those little things that get stuck to your socks because that's what they are. But it was
Okay.
delicious. It was amazing. So we try and incorporate as much of the Swedish history and tradition as we can into everything we do. It's of course, every neighborhood is going to have every neighborhood is gonna over the years is gonna change and
Yeah.
lose some things, but then
Ebbs and
gain some
flows.
things. Yeah, yeah. And then of course
Yeah.
Midsommarfest is the big one. At Midsommarfest every year we do the raising of the maypole and then the traditional Swedish dancing around the maypole. So we try very hard to keep the traditions and the histories incorporated into everything we do in the neighborhood.
Yeah, and so I know we talked a little bit about the Midsummer Fest before we started the record. I'm sorry, I forget if we've talked about it since I hit record. So in case not, what exactly is the Midsummer Fest, and yeah, just
Yeah.
what all do you expect at that event?
Yeah. So,
When
well,
is it?
inevitably, I can't get through a day without saying the word Midsommarfest about 250 times. So, we're
Yeah.
going to talk about it inevitably. So,
Uh,
Midsommarfest is our annual 3-day street music festival. We're going into our 58th year with it this year. We get about 80 to 90,000 attendees over the course of the weekend. We have 5 stages of musical performances. We have over 50 artists. We have like a ton of local vendors set up on the footprint. So local merchants, local artisans, crafts. We have food, of course. And this year I'm excited, we have an area specifically reserved for Andersonville Andersonville restaurant establishments to serve their food. So it's honestly, and the tag of Midsummerfest this summer starts here. It's the first big festival of the summer in Chicago. And I love a lot of people tell us it's their favorite one,
yeah.
which is very fun. Saturday last year was crazy. We had so many people there Saturday last year that we actually broke Verizon cell towers.
Oh,
So but it was a cool accomplishment in my mind in terms of attendance, but it was a little difficult to communicate with each other at that time that happened. But yeah, Midsummerfest it's a fantastic celebratory weekend. There's like I said, there's always something for someone in Andersonville. There's definitely something for everyone in Midsummerfest. We have a kids area that has a lot of booths and vendors curated specifically for kids activities or kids products. We have a first time vendor booth. So we always have a particular space in the festival set aside for vendors that have never been a part of Midsummerfest before. That's curated by one of our local businesses, Printed Curiosities. We have a community booth set up to meet with local nonprofits. I mean, it's just everything throughout the weekend. I think anything you can imagine, we try and incorporate. The one thing we still haven't been able to get yet is a Ferris wheel. We're working on it. It's a large endeavor, but yeah,
yeah.
Midsummerfest is going to be incredible this year. So,
Where would a Ferris wheel go?
oh, we'd find a spot.
Yeah.
We managed to make the impossible happen at the Andersonville Chamber of Commerce.
There you go. And that's the weekend of that is like you said June 7,
Yeah,
6
June
was it?
7, 8, and 9
Okay.
is Midsummerfest this year. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be fantastic. And it's a festival. One of the things about Midsummerfest is, as I'm sure people are aware, with street festivals, there's always a suggested donation. And I always like to make sure people know that donation, since we're a nonprofit, we're not a city organization. So that donation is actually what goes right back into the festival, paying for festival expenses, paying our
Hmm.
artists throughout at the festival, but also through events throughout the year. Anything the chamber does in terms of throwing community events, because we do a lot of events that we don't charge tickets for. The donations we get from Midsummerfest, all of those donations go right back to that. So Midsummerfest is also our biggest fundraiser of the year. But I always like to make sure people know that it's not money that's disappearing into the bureaucratic black hole of the city. This is all going straight
Yeah.
back into Andersonville.
Yeah. No, that is a really good that is a good message to put out there because I go to a lot of these fests and I admit I'm kind of the worst with that. I'm just like, look, you're not gonna charge me money to walk on this sidewalk. You can't do that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna walk right by you. I'm sorry. But
And it's
there is that thing in the back of my mind a little bit that if you don't know any better, and clearly I didn't, or I'm just cheap, who knows? But yeah, you think it's just like I'm already getting taxed enough here. Like, no, I'm not, like
yeah, and
you guys can figure this out. But yeah, if it's not, that's not
it
what it
has
is. It's going
yeah, it
to.
has nothing to do with taxes at all. And of course, I always say the $10 is suggested. People can do whatever they want. Every little bit helps, but I try and be very clear, and I put a lot of thought into this year how we are going to communicate this, but where the money is going. And it is not going to the city. We actually donate a good percentage of what we make every year to local nonprofits. We've donated over $200,000 to nonprofits in the time running Midsommarfest. So yeah, those are the sorts of things that we say Midsommarfest can't happen without the community's support with those donations too. So
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so great stuff on the Midsummerfest. That's all. Again, what are yeah, I know you've touched on some of the other events you did. Were you talking about one that's, or you might have already mentioned it, the one in September or October?
Arts Weekend. So Arts Weekend is great. And last year was my first year working Arts Weekend as an employee working at the chamber, and it was absolutely fantastic. It was a huge success. What we do is we recruit or we seek out and we find local artists from Chicago, and we match them with business owners in the neighborhood who are interested in taking part in Arts Weekend. And the business owners will host that artist's work in their business from like Friday to Sunday. And we'll print up an entire sort of almost museum guide, a museum tour guide that we hand out to people, and they can do a self-guided tour throughout the neighborhood for that whole weekend, view all these artists' work, see, what the stores are offering, talk to the artists. The Friday night of Arts Weekend is great because it's kind of the night of parties and receptions. So a lot of the businesses will host gatherings with the artists and provide and offer refreshments and food and really make an event out of presenting these people's work. We welcome like all types of artists, from visual to musical, live performances. One year we had a theater group where we had a couple of businesses that signed up for this, and the theater group each did improv, sort of single person, one person shows in the windows of these businesses. And I have this great picture of this group of maybe 40 people standing outside the window at Rattleback Records watching this person do a performance. And then I think another year we had a similar thing where we had live painting happening in the windows of a ton of the businesses. And it's great. It's a fun time. We had last year an artist, Shanlandia, she created a community mural, and everyone in the neighborhood that came to Art Weekend could contribute, coloring in of the mural. And it was beautiful. It came out
Cool.
wonderfully. Yeah. So Arts Weekend is a big one. I think we just had our spring wine walk, and wine walk is a really, really fun one. We have about 700 people come to wine walk. We have 2 routes throughout the neighborhood, and there's businesses sign up to host wine pourers, and In Fine Spirits, our local wine store, will source the wines and get the pourers, and people can go up and down. For the price of the ticket, they get custom Andersonville glass, and then all of the wines they sample throughout the route. It's a fun day.
I bet.
It gets very, very busy. It was a good one, this past one.
Yeah, how could that be a bad time?
Yeah, right. We also, I mean, and we also will do a lot of non-ticketed events, just things to do for the community, like Valborg is one of them. We do a puzzle exchange, which we got some good press on puzzle exchange last year because it was huge, but it's a day we bring a puzzle, take a puzzle. You can bring as many puzzles as you want, drop them off, and you can take up to as many puzzles as you brought. So we had, 250 people line up for puzzle exchange last year. It was great. It was so fun. And we also had, for the first year, we had our puzzle throwdown. We had a custom Andersonville water tower puzzle made, and we had 3 contestants per round, see who could solve the puzzle the fastest. And somehow we had originally budgeted each of them 30 minutes, and one person solved it in 8 minutes. It's crazy. It was very cool. So
like an actual puzzle, like a puzzle piece, put it together.
It was a 100-piece jigsaw puzzle. So it was great. It was really fun. But then, we do a lot of things that are just campaigns to get people to come visit. Restaurant Week, our restaurants will sign up and create custom menus for people to come and sample throughout the week. We'll do things like, I mentioned Fika Fest. Holidays are a big one too. We try and, deck out the neighborhood with not just decorations, but we bring in the holiday trolley, and there's a weekend where families ride the holiday trolley, which is super fun. Santa Claus is usually available at Guest House Hotel for pictures. We had a cookie decorating class last year. So it's just everything. Our team is really great. We love working with each other, and we kind of have a moment where we have moments all the time where we're like, this would be a fun thing to do. Great. Let's sit down and plan that right now. And just Valborg was a perfect example. Lexi, our business services administrative manager, was like, I like this. I want to do this. So we did it.
Hmm. Yeah. It's funny, the folks at Ravenswood said a similar thing about their puzzle related events that just had a much larger turnout than anyone ever would have expected. There's something in the air on the north side when it comes to puzzles. There's a market to be tapped into there somehow.
Well, it started after COVID because what were people doing
Sure.
when they were on lockdown? They were doing puzzles and they were baking bread.
Yeah.
And we're not going to do a
Yeah.
bread exchange, but
Mhm.
the puzzle. So people have done their puzzles over and over and over again. So it's time for new
Yeah.
ones.
Yeah. So obviously, anybody who's, maybe listening to this from out of town doesn't know Chicago very well. All they know is the headlines, things like that. Their crime, safety, stuff like that's going to be at least a question that they have. How would you speak to, that kind of stuff as far as Andersonville goes?
Yeah. I mean, it's a difficult subject. It's a difficult question. It's something that, as a chamber, we're very aware of and we're very keyed in on. I think we have the trust of the business owners and the community residents who are very, if they see something, our phrase is see something, say something. That, people know that if something happens, they can come to us and tell us we saw this or this thing happened and we will try and handle it. Or we have good relationships with the alder people's office. So we stay in communication to figure out how we can address any issues we have. Andersonville, I would say, one of the things about moving here, when I first started living in Andersonville, I felt very safe. I think generally that's a pretty general consensus around the neighborhood. I would say this comes back to the community thing where we have a couple of neighborhood Facebook pages where people will post updates on saying, hey, this happened here. Keep an eye out. Just, make sure everyone's safe. We always have people commenting saying, saw this person, maybe having trouble with this at this intersection. Was it you? Were you okay? Does anyone need help? We also, I mean, the community will kind of has established their own neighborhood watch. They all think of it as their own responsibility to keep the neighborhood safe and enjoyable for everyone. So, I'm sure people were had been aware of, the north side as a whole, not Andersonville specifically, but the north side as a whole, several months ago experienced sort of a few break-ins in businesses, in the evenings around or like, 2 a.m. And it's an unfortunate thing to happen. It's very detrimental to a small business. But one of the things that was, an optimistic result of it is that a business that got broken into, or, they just had their window smashed, which just costs a lot of money to repair. Right after that happened, the whole neighborhood, the whole community got together and said, we're all going to go shop at this business now.
Hmm.
Order online. The line down the street to help out this business that got broken into was incredible. So
Hmm.
at the first chance the community gets, they'll go support a business that's going through something like that.
Hmm.
So of course, we live in a big city. There's
Yeah.
always going to be things that, happen and we can't avoid. But I would say Andersonville's a neighborhood that does it best to keep it safe for everyone.
Hmm. Cool. So yeah, if not necessarily in the realm of, crime, safety, things like that, what would you say is a challenge that Andersonville is facing?
I mean, it comes back to the change in real estate, the change in, the businesses coming in. Things have gotten very, very expensive.
Mm-hmm.
There's, the business owners have had to, opening a business on its own is an extremely difficult, overwhelming task, but they do it. And we have a podcast where I talk to a lot of business owners, always Andersonville podcast. And
Okay.
it's always
Nice.
interesting hearing their stories about how they got started, how they got this off the ground and how much work they went through to make it happen. And I think business owners just fighting ordinances, fighting rising rent costs, fighting, inventory costs, shipping, like everything,
Yeah.
is coming into play for them right now. I would say that's the biggest challenge. I think we have the people that love the neighborhood and want to come and want to support. The business owners are just doing their best to stay on top of everything, making sure they can stay open, offer the same, services and products that they want to offer that are accessible for people in the neighborhood.
Nice. All right, the next question could get a little controversial. It's going to force you to pick some favorites here.
Oh
So
God.
somebody has one day to spend in Andersonville. What would you say is the perfect way from dawn till nighttime to spend that day?
Well, this is great actually, because this is what I do whenever I have friends come visit. We
Hmm.
take a full day and we do Andersonville. And I think that's one of the great things about it is you start around Gethsemane, the flower shop around Clark and Edgewater, and
Hmm.
you just make your way south to about Clark and Lawrence. You can hit every business. You can stop and talk to the business
Yeah.
owners. You can experience everything. And I always say don't forget the side streets, because you have businesses like stationery stores like paper and pencil. If you're an OCD person and you love seeing things lined up perfectly, and if you follow those oddly satisfying Instagram accounts or something, you got to walk into paper and pencil. It's a dream. I mean, I say start with a coffee shop, start with a cafe, get your drink. We just had a business open last year. They just hit their 1 year anniversary, the Understudy. It is one of two theater bookstore coffee shops in the country. So it's
Theater
half a
coffee shops.
yeah, so it's half a
Cool.
bookstore, half a coffee shop, and it's a theater themed bookstore. So it's plays, and
Okay.
they started doing performances in there, and they do drag performances. They bring in, local writers just to present workshops and do their work. So the Understudy is great.
And that's such an Andersonville business. That's the most
Oh yeah,
Andersonville thing I've heard all day. That's amazing.
absolutely,
Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely. I think I'll touch on some new stuff, but we just had last week a Taiwanese noodle restaurant open up called Mignoli, and I do have a podcast episode where I talk to Chef Rich Wang and ex Wang. Their story, Rich came right out of Taiwan and from his childhood village Mignoli, and they just opened this restaurant, and it's amazing. It's People have been waiting in line to get in. But there's restaurants from, we have the Taiwanese noodle shop. We have Faya, which is food of the Levant. We have Penelope's, which is a vegan taqueria, and it's delicious. If you're looking for home goods, you can walk down the street and go to GL Home Decor. You can go to Vase and Vessel, Casona. We have Alley Cat Comics. Alley Cat Comics is an amazing, everyone loves this. It's called Alley Cat because you walk down this narrow little alley and you come out into this little opening, and there's this adorable comic book store. And they've won best comic book store in the city in the reader poll for, I think, like 5 years running at this point.
Hmm.
We have some great bookstores, Women and Children First Bookstore, Uncharted Books. I mean, you walk down that strip and you'll find anything you could want. I always recommend people go to Woolly Mammoth. Woolly Mammoth is an oddity
Yeah.
store.
Yep.
They were featured on an episode of, I think, what was it? Pawn Wars?
Hmm.
I don't, I know of it, but if you are interested, if you're looking to buy a goat skeleton or some human teeth, you can go into Woolly Mammoth and find either of those, very affordable. If you're looking for
Hmm.
an authentic Victorian casket with the skeleton still in it, they've got one of those. It is an awesome store. It is so cool.
That store doesn't, from the outside, I've never been in, but I know that's on Foster, right? Like
Yeah.
south side of Foster. Yeah, I've driven
Mhm.
by it thousands of times. I've never gone in there. It doesn't seem like it would be big enough to have all that stuff in there.
Oh,
Is it one of
it
those way
does.
way bigger on the inside than it seems?
You know what? I don't even think it's that it's way bigger on the inside. The ceiling is pretty high, but the way that
Uh-huh.
they organize everything, it's
Okay.
just, I mean, it's one of those stores where you walk in and at first you think this is clutter, but as you're walking through, it's so well organized and it's so well laid out.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so cool. I always bring
Yeah.
people in there. It's such a cool store.
Sounds like an experience for sure.
Yeah,
And
I mean, so
then
start on Clark. You can walk
Brown
your
Elephant, similar.
Yes. We have Brown Elephant. We have some good resale shops like Brown Elephant. Rattleback Record is our record store. They have if you want 8 tracks, they got 8 tracks. Cassettes are apparently coming back in style. So if you're looking for some cassettes, Paul, the owner, is amazing. He can find you anything you're looking for. Of course, other great restaurants, places like Replay and Meeting House Tavern do trivia. A lot of them are also carrying one thing that's been really cool about the neighborhood is the neighborhood bars and restaurants have really been embracing the non-alcoholic movement, which
Yeah.
we've seen get much bigger. And actually, another plug for Midsommarfest this year. For the first time, we are introducing a THC beverage on the footprint. We've got Wink Seltzer, which is a THC flavored seltzer, kind of seltzer water, kind of like a LaCroix, but it's got THC and CBD in it. So
Mm,
I'm very excited for it because, as a person who doesn't really drink very much, sometimes it's tough to go out with friends and not want to drink, or
sure.
people that don't drink don't want a non-alcoholic drink that still tastes like alcohol, or. So places like Meeting House Tavern and Sofo Tap and little restaurants like Little Bad Wolf are all carrying Wink now. So where the neighborhood is offering a lot of non-alcoholic options, and it's been really fun to see that become more of a presence. So there's another
Yeah,
thing of there's always something for everyone.
that's
Yeah.
all right. Well, that didn't end up being a controversial answer at all. We were just like, let's just list every Andersonville business, but that's
I
okay. I
mean,
mean, that is inappropriate. And you're right. Like that Clark, that strip of Clark, and the little bits of side streets and Foster and stuff is so dense that you really can do pretty much all of it in a day and just kind of
yeah.
go in all of them and check them out.
And I mean, it comes back to what I said about it feeling like a small town. It's walkable.
Yeah. Mhm.
You go to some neighborhoods, you go to some cities, and I'm the sort of person when I travel, I like to insert myself into a neighborhood and just walk around. And sometimes you have neighborhoods where you walk around and you have a few businesses, and then you have a couple blocks of just residential, and then you have a few more businesses. And Clark Street, and then the side streets like Balmoral and Berwyn and Talpa, they're just loaded with things to do over like a 10-block stretch. And it's a great walk.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. Is there a common misconception that you deal with about Andersonville?
common misconception about Andersonville. Huh. I mean, that's a very good question. I could come up with more common misconceptions about the Chamber of Commerce,
Mine
just
too.
just that
Yeah.
we're a government agency and have any say in terms of what businesses come into the neighborhood. But I mean,
Hmm.
I don't that's the thing about Andersonville is I think the people that know it love it because we're very upfront with who we are. We're very upfront. I think as a chamber, if you look at our social media or you look at, any marketing or advertising or communications, like I said, our team is great. We love working with each other and we're very fun. We try and keep it genuine and personable and authentic. So, I mean, in terms of misconceptions about Andersonville, I'd say let your viewers reach out to me and tell me their misconceptions, and I'm happy to upset those misconceptions for them.
Hmm. All right. Fair enough. I think those were all the main questions I have for you. So I guess just yeah, like this bottom line in summary, also as somebody who's not originally from Chicago, I'll ask this in kind of two phases. Why do you think somebody would want to pick Chicago as a place to live out of all the different cities they could live?
Mhm.
And if they do choose Chicago, why would they want to choose Andersonville?
Well, I think in terms of why pick Chicago, I always recommend someone do exactly what I did and get an apartment before you've ever been here, and then just come visit 2 weeks before you move in, hoping that you made the right decision. Because I'm from the East. Uh, Anyone in the Midwest would say I'm from the East Coast, but I'm from Western Pennsylvania. That is not the East Coast. Everyone in the Midwest
No,
thinks anything
yeah.
east of Ohio is the East Coast.
Yeah, you
Um,
have more in common with Ohio than you do like New York.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But when I first came to Chicago, I was stunned by sort of the Midwest attitude, the people making eye contact on the sidewalk, and either just you don't know someone but you smile at them or give them a little wave or something like that, and it's acknowledged that that's the Midwest attitude. I think Chicago, we get a lot of crap about the winters, but Chicagoans say, we deal with the winters because the summers here are absolutely incredible. I mean,
Hmm.
we had an 80-degree day a couple days ago, and I was just saying to my friend, we're sitting on the beach, you know,
Hmm.
eating cookies. And we said to him, wow, this is really great. We can essentially walk to a beach or get to
Yeah.
a beach within 10 minutes of anywhere we are. So I think that kind of, just everything that there is to do, the culture, the food, of course. And then I think Chicago is a city based on some other places I've lived that has managed to maintain a sort of progressive nature in terms of how it approaches either politics or culture or sociology. I mean, I think Chicago is a city that has a very, very strong connection with itself in terms of promoting LGBTQIA inclusiveness, supporting BIPOC business owners and neighborhoods and communities, where I think Chicagoans put forth the effort to help make their city better. I think Chicagoans are very, very proud of Chicago being the city it is. In terms of Andersonville, you want to be able to walk out of your house and have literally everything you need on hand, including ice cream and pizza. And, I mean, the two most important things, of course. And you want someone to smile at you and while you're walking down the street, and you want to find that coffee shop where you go in and you walk in the door and they go, "Hey, Charlie, Jake, it's good to see you today. Do you want your regular?" This is the place. This is the place you come.
Yeah, nice. Great answers all. You're ready for that.
It's
So
all
we've
up. It's all up
dispersed.
here.
Yeah. So we, I'm guessing the answer to this next, this last thing, has been kind of dispersed throughout the conversation already, but just to kind of put a nice bow on it, before I, hit the end record button here, is there anything that you would like to promote? The chamber, your podcast, the events, anything else that we haven't touched on?
Yeah, I mean, definitely check out our podcast, the Always Andersonville podcast. It's available anywhere that you listen to your podcasts. We do a lot of cool things besides interviewing business owners and hearing their stories. For January, which is Health and Wellness Month, we did a whole series on health and wellness tips with different experts when it comes to physical wellness, mental wellness. We did a whole episode on sexual health and wellness, which I think is something that gets overlooked a lot. We have for the summer coming up, we have some great events. One of our big popular ones for the summer is our vintage market. Uh, the third Sunday of every month, we do from June to September, we have a vintage market. So any vintage vendors throughout the city can apply and set up tables at our vintage market and share their wares, and they're very, very popular. And just head to follow us on social media. I think we have a really fun account. We have a new mascot that we are in the process of doing. We have an Andersonville moniker mascot championship bracket going on right now, where the community is selecting our new name of our mascot, and it has been interesting. We have it'll probably be done by the time this comes out, but we have 2 days left of that. But we want to keep people up to date on all the fun things that we like to do here too. I mean, I live in Rogers Park, but I spend way more time in Andersonville than I do in Rogers Park.
Yeah. That's not that far. Just a couple minutes
No,
up the
not at
road.
all. I can walk down here.
Mhm.
But yeah, so I'd say, I think we've created a personality through our marketing and our communication that welcomes people to follow us, because we're going to provide them with something fun to do any given day, any given weekend.
All right. Well, that's all I got for you, unless there was something that I should have asked that you were hoping I would.
No,
I think we covered a
I
lot of
think we
ground there.
covered it. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, right on. Charlie Wein of the Andersonville Chamber of Commerce. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah. Thank you, Jake. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.